Hello everyone, I'm Steve Marshall. I was last here in 2016. I'd spent 7 years researching a book about Avebury. I used to live very close to Avebury. Well, for 10 years I lived in Yatesbury, just a couple of miles away. And I used to go out every day, walking the landscape and conducting my research. This culminated in my book, Exploring Avebury, the Essential Guide, which is for sale outside of here, £15. And I was pleased with the book, very pleased with it. Despite having 400 illustrations and 200 something pages, I had so much research that I'd accumulated in that 7-year period. It couldn't actually fit it in the book. So I had to make a huge website which has all the extra information in it, and it's a good resource for anyone interested in Avebury. But the work I did was all very scientific and was endorsed by many Avebury archaeologists. But it didn't include a side of Avebury that many people think is more important. So lots of the people who visit Avebury again and again, sometimes people visit several times a year, they're not interested in soil horizons and carbon dating. What they love about Avebury is its atmosphere and its mystical qualities. And I just couldn't fit any of that in the book. There wasn't space, and it's not something I'm good at writing about. So I decided to follow up the book with something quite different. Let's just have a look at the book first. This will give you an idea of what's in the book. So from that, I went to Avebury Soundscapes, an album of music, which to me expresses Avebury's mystical side. This seems a bit of an odd leap, I know, but I spent most of my life as a film composer. I did scores for hundreds and hundreds of documentaries, wildlife, travel, anthropology programs, and for a while I worked in the BBC radiophonic workshop where they used to make the Doctor Who music. So expressing things musically comes more naturally to me really than writing. So I'm going to talk to you just about a small part of this album. Like the book, it covered all the different areas of Avebury, which is it's a whole sequence of monuments, and the landscape as well is equally important. So there are 10 tracks on the album, and each one is for a different aspect or a different monument of the Avebury complex. And I could go on about it for hours, but you're lucky I've only got half an hour. So I'm a bit disturbed here because I'm seeing a view of PowerPoint that I don't normally get, and it's a little bit confusing. I'm getting the hang of it now. The track that you heard when we were testing the sound there was Windmill Hill, which is one of the loveliest places around Avebury. It was the first occupied place from about 5000 BC, and cattle herders used to meet there and bring their cattle and trade them and feast on them. So that's why you heard cattle lowing in that track. In the album, I incorporate something called binaural recording. This is not the same as binaural beats. Binaural beats is a way of changing your mental state through sound. Binaural recording is almost like holography with picture. If you record with a model of a human head with microphones clipped on the side where its ears should be, or if you do, as I generally do, putting microphones in your ears pointing outwards, then the recording is spatially encoded, just like a hologram is. And when you play it back on headphones, you'll hear 360-degree sound all around you, above and below. And I've been doing this for decades, and so I had lots of recordings made in the Avebury area, inside the monuments as well. And so if you play the album on headphones, you'll hear things like birds flying above your head, or birds flapping through the trees that are not there. If there's a thunderstorm above your head, and some of the rhythmic sounds kind of move around behind you. It's a different listening experience to what you might have heard before. The track I began with was The Sanctuary. Now I don't know if you know The Sanctuary, sort of east of Avebury on the side of the A4. That's how it looks today. It's been described as one of Britain's least spectacular archaeological sites, perhaps second only to Woodhenge. And it is actually very similar to Woodhenge in that it looks really dull, because all there is a series of painted concrete posts put there by the Ministry of Works in 1950. But it is actually fascinating. I've got two hippies there for scale in the picture, and where they're sitting, that was the size of the original monument. It was a series of concentric rings of wooden posts, which obviously rotted, and before they rotted, standing stones were put in position to mark where the circle had been. But because it was rather unimposing, they then put another circle around it, twice the size. But what I was interested in was the geometry of the original monument. It may have looked like this, with just plain posts, or there may have been tree trunks, they may have had branches, they may have been upside down even with the roots sticking in the air. Or it may have been like this, like Stonehenge-like, with lintels. But you can see there the concentric rings of posts. The smaller posts on the outside seem to have been a fence to keep animals out. If we look at it in plan, you can see it as a series of overlaid regular polygons. From the middle outwards, that's 6, 8, 12 and 16 sides. So I find geometry rather difficult to understand, visually anyway. So I decided I could do this musically by dividing the time into 6, 8, 12 and 16. I'll play you a little clip so you can see what I mean. There's all the posts in plan. Here's the music. 6. 8. 12. 16. So to get the idea, I'm trying to put across ideas in archaeology in just a different way by looking at things sideways. Another track is called Bone Ceremony, and it's based on the West Kennet Long Barrow. There's the West Kennet Long Barrow, 100 metres long, and at one end of it there's these small chambers made of sarsen stone. I've done a presentation here about the acoustics of the barrow a few years ago. There's a central passage and then 4 with a chamber at the end of it, and 4 more chambers, 2 at each side. There's a resonance, an infrasonic resonance in the main chamber, in the central passage, which it can be excited by whirling a bull roarer. I'm very interested in bull roarers, and I'm sure that they were used in the Neolithic since they're found all around the world. Here's a picture of some bull roarers. These are in the amazing Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, and they're from Papua New Guinea. But every culture in the world just about has invented the bull roarer independently. They're generally made of wood and sort of fish-shaped. A piece of string's tied on one end, and you whirl the thing around your head, and as it whirls, it spins on its axis and produces a sort of low, sort of throbbing hum that goes up and down in pitch. And because it makes such low frequencies, if you whirl this in the mouth of the long barrow, it's a bit like blowing across the neck of a bottle. You get this low frequency, which you can't hear, but it can change your mental state. You get the impression that someone's standing behind you, or some people have visions, see things, feel things. It's quite dramatic. Here's me outside my house whirling a bull roarer that's got coloured LEDs fixed to it, and I hope you can hear the sound. In many cultures, it's known as the voice of the ancestors, the sound of the bull roarer. And so what I imagine is, like many archaeologists, I think that long barrows were used for more than burying bones. I think they were used as centres for initiation into tribal customs or rites of passage or whatever. And as well as that low frequency resonance, there are musical resonances. There's the barrow in plan. You can see where it says E and A. That's the note that those chambers naturally resonate at. If you're going to make any kind of a sound, you'll hear that note. The first two are a low E, which is a note I couldn't sing until I was in my 50s. So it's interesting that if people were used to resonate these chambers, there'd be tribal elders, and they'd certainly be unusually old for their time. So you can hear the low E's. These are recorded inside the barrow itself. That's the E, and then above that's the A. So throughout this piece of music, I use the two together, the E and the A. Now, if in my imaginary scenario, young people who are in their early teens perhaps are put in the end chamber, which has literally got the bones of their ancestors with them. When one Victorian archaeologist dug into the barrow, he discovered a skeleton that was tied into a sitting position. So if people were in there, they'd been sat literally with maybe their great-great-grandfather. They'd have been prepared for the experience, perhaps given magic mushrooms, perhaps starved, deprived of water. So they'd be really primed for some strange experience. But presumably there'd be someone conducting this ceremony. So I imagine some kind of priest or shaman with an incantation. What would that sound like? Well, it's very likely to have spoken something like Proto-Indo-European, which is a language that's been slowly pieced together from surviving fragments over the last 200 years by linguists. So we assume that the priest probably spoke Proto-Indo-European. Well, that's quite handy for me because I've got a dictionary of Proto-Indo-European. And from little snippets in there, I managed to put together an imaginary ceremony. So translated into English, it is Sky Father, Holy Earth Mother, God-inspired powerful magic force. Dream and remember, dream and truly see, a bright light in this place of darkness. Earth and stone, rock and bone, rain and river, springs and blood, sun and moon, wind and fire. Dream and truly see, you sons and daughters, dream and truly see. Dream and remember, dream and truly see. And I recorded that inside the long barrow, where you can hear the resonances affecting the voice.
Dievas Pater, Verna Cyclos, what is Ishnos, Kuros, Judes, Suertis mea, suertiret, lucas in Gisrides. Deton, echnon, peru, os, solidarno, ecte esch, seul, megnat, vensti ignes, suertiret circumdidota, suertiret, suertis mea, suertiret.
You can hear how the voice has got that kind of note to it, the two notes which come from the resonance. So I used that, and so I started with some sounds of owls that were recorded just outside Avebury, and then the bull roarers, and then the incantation. Next slide. So you can hear that's how the track starts, and that pulse that comes in on the synthesizers, that's at a particular tempo for one good reason. To get that mind-altering effect of the resonance of the passage, you can either resonate the passage directly, or you can drum at the frequency that it resonates at. This is very low frequency, it's 9 hertz, 9 times a second, which is too low to be heard. But for a drummer, it's quite playable. As the track develops, some drumming comes in, which was sort of quite in keeping for Neolithic people, and the ceremony works. The two of the ancestors come zooming down. If you hear it on headphones, it's actually fireworks backwards, so you'll hear this whoosh come down, and the people announce themselves in Proto-Indo-European. I'm your grandmother, I'm your great-great-grandmother, I'm your great-great-grandfather, and so they introduce themselves, and then they turn into a flock of rooks and fly off into the sky. It's quite psychedelic actually. So I'll play you the end section of Bone Ceremony. Probably. So off they go as a flock of rooks. So you're getting the idea. That was Bone Ceremony. And the last track I'm going to talk about is about the Avebury great henge itself, called Great Circle. There is the Great Circle, the amazing Avebury henge, 1/4 mile across, and obviously it's got roads running through it today. If we can imagine what Avebury was like thousands of years ago, with no roads and no houses or trees, no cars going past and aeroplanes and buses, it would have been quite a different place. If you were to make a sound in the centre of Avebury, say by clicking a pair of sticks together, you'd hear an echo coming back from the bank of the henge and these sarsen stones that are erected all around it. And so that sounds, when you click where the red dot is, the sound is travelling out to the edge of the henge, coming back again. It's travelling 1/4 mile, so that's a very slow echo. But inside the henge were 2 smaller stone circles. They should probably be called rings, because one of them was actually slightly egg-shaped. But they're about 100 metres across. And if you were to stand where the dots are and click, you'd get an echo which would be louder than that from the outer circle, but much shorter. And I didn't realise until I started doing this album that the 2 echoes are so related in time. The echo of the Great Circle is exactly 4 times the length of the echo from the smaller circles, which is perfect if you're trying to make a piece of music, because immediately you've got a rhythm. So if you click my sticks in the middle, that's the short echo. Here's the long echo. So if you use the 2 together, you're getting into a rhythm. So the tempo and the rhythm of the track are taken directly from the proportions of the henge itself. I've used lots of dancing harmonics as well, since harmonics are the building blocks of the universe, I think. And I wanted to give the whole thing a sense of circularity, to emphasise that thing of it being a great circle. So I built this contraption in my garage. It's like a big wooden cross with speakers attached to the 4 ends, and then the whole thing was suspended from the ceiling in my garage, like this. And then I played back parts of the track whilst this thing was slowly revolving, with microphones in my ears, and when you play it back on headphones, you can hear those sounds travelling behind you, and very, very, very circular. It's unusual, but it works. So that was me recording it. And I'm going to play you now as an edited version of the track with a little video put together from all the thousands of photographs and videos I've taken inside Avebury. It flickers a lot, so if you're epileptic or you have any problems with that, apologies, please look away. So here is Great Circle. So that was Great Circle, and if you'd like to buy the album, it's available out there in the market room, and it's £10, or you can buy the book Exploring Avebury, the Essential Guide, which is £15, and my recent little walking guide, Avebury Days, which is a £5. So thank you very much.